see soil pH, buffer pH. Everybody seen that on a soil test? Okay, so we're buffering to get an idea what's happening. Step 2 is where I go next, it's CPCs. So I want to take a look and see what my reading is. If you've got a soil test without that on there, you've done yourself a disservice, you've wasted 18 bucks. It's not even worth it. You just go spread your nitrogen like you always do. Okay? I'm not kidding. This is true. You don't need to do it if you don't want to learn about it. Just run your normal program. Okay? But this is what we want to really find out. Like, what's the soil type? What are your base saturations? And then we can see if there's any blockage. That's where we're going to find it, because that's the second step to find blockages. Now, limits. Everybody's doing really cool charts and graphs. There's colors all over your soil test when you see it. It's like up and down, and there's a line, and you don't really know what it means, but you can identify what's low and what's not. Doesn't mean anything to a lot of people. They just say, well, it's low, now what? That's the next question. Okay, so we look at limits. That way we can see what we have to fill in, and peaks. So when we start seeing the high stuff, now we can see what's blocking from the nutrient load and what we might have to buffer that way. So this is the order. You're going to read right down. So this is it. Buffer, adjust, balance, and enhance the phase principle. I came up with that myself. I'm pretty good about it. We're going to do this right now. So this is the way that you're going to run through your flow. It's a flow. Very simple. You're going to identify the problems quickly. Okay? There's a soil test. This is one from Ward Labs. Ward I've used for many, many years. They were in Kearney, Nebraska. I like them. They do a nice clean setup here. There are no charts on here, which means for most people who see soil tests, they will have no idea what to do next. They're like, oh, numbers. Now what? So let's try to get through some of this now what stuff, because this we'll show some with some pretty colors and it'll make it easier, but we're going to do one without it first. It's the same thing. Soil pH, we want to see this first. Do we have to do anything to buffer this? Probably not. He's at a 7, fairly neutral, that's good. This has got rye and bluegrass, it likes that zone, that's fine. We're going to grow that somewhere between 6.5 and 7.5 pretty comfortably. I'm okay with that, no big deal. So let's just sort of jump over, we're going to see what's happening over here on his base saturations. This number is 100%. Okay, this can only ever equal 100%, whatever the numbers are in these boxes. Hydrogen, potassium, calcium, magnesium, and salt. That is what's making up the saturations in the soil solution that is going to help carry the other nutrients. So there are numbers in here that you want to be hitting for those saturations. Okay, this is high. Magnesium is high on here. It's too high. It's too high, and that means it's going to have to ultimately get buffered, and we're going to need to bring up some calcium on this particular test. And I'm going to show you why that is here in a second. But everything is always 100%, right? So if I come in here with calcium and I start adding it here, this number is going to go down, right? Because it can only be 100%. That means these other ones are going to be affected too, so we have to make sure we keep our ranges in check when we go across the rest of this number. But here's where we're focusing now, on these base saturations. I know that this is going to need calcium, and I'm probably going to do calcitic lime on this particular one. It's not going to take very much to change it, but we are probably going to have to do something. That's my first initial blush until I come back across this and we'll decide if I change my mind on that. But that's here. So what I'm going to notice though is as soon as I start adding calcium, my potassium is probably going to drop. I know my magnesium is going to drop. Salt is probably going to change a little bit, so I better come and check on some of these other nutrients that are in this zone. And I can see stuff that's already low because I know what they're supposed to be. Not everybody else is going to know what these are, but if I see this number here, this calcium and magnesium, there are a lot of conversations about a 5-to-1 ratio, 8-to-1 ratio, whatever that might be. All I know is this is low. This is low for this particular soil, okay? Sum of cations is 7.5. We're dealing with mostly sand. We have a lot of space here. The beauty of that is it doesn't require a lot of material to alter it. That's what's nice about that, because there's actually a lot of space. So the reason that this calcium is here, this soil can probably take up to about 2,500 parts per million pretty easily, not be out of whack. That's a lot. So there's some space here that can be adjusted. But we were going to look across this whole board and decide if we need to do anything else. Honestly, after looking at it, you guys see this organic matter number?
Yeah.
That's high. That's awesome. Like that's really, really good, because this is something that we can actually utilize some of the nitrogen. Now, we saw here, if you look across the bottom here, there are recommendations for N, P, and K. He doesn't need any phosphorus, okay? Coming off of the numbers up here, we're not gonna need it because he's got 165 pounds of available P up there. That's a lot. It's a significant amount. It's good, yes?
Zoom in on that a little bit.
Maybe? Probably not. Would I just stand here? I don't know if I can. I can yell out the numbers, it might be easier, but I mean, this is I don't think I can zoom this. Let's just see. Let's see. We'll do it again? No. Just pull out. Can't do it. But he's got plenty of phos. There's no phos recommendations down here. So there's a calculation for nitrate in here, which is also awesome. If we've got a Kentucky bluegrass lawn, typically the recommendation on that is going to be basically 4 pounds of N annually per 1,000. That's what we're going to end up putting out there. So call it 180 pounds of N, but look at what the suggestion is here. 85. That's nice. That's also really good to know. Why is it only 85? Anybody? Organic matter. That's contributory. We're getting free nitrogen right here that's not really going to decline unless we salt the living snot out of it or over nitrogen, that number. If we start feeding a ton of nitrogen into that, this number is going to drop out like crazy, and then you'll just have to continue to feed high nitrogen to it. Now, in lawn care, we don't look at this number as much as, say, in agriculture, because that number right there is the difference between a profitable season for a farmer. If somebody said, I want to grow 300 bushel corn, and they said now, because of what you've got in the soil, you only have to put out 80 pounds of N this year, they will jump for joy. Yes, sir?
You said unless we salted a lot, where is the primary culprit in lawn care for introduction of salt?
All chemical fertilizers. All chemical fertilizers. Everything is a salt. All nutrients are a salt. Whatever doesn't get used and ends up as a runoff or in space and can't be utilized by the soil will load up in the form of a salt in some level of the soil. Now,
how would in charge relate to that?
Low, because also the rate is low. Okay, so most of it is rates. So every fertilizer has a salt index. You can look on, if it's not on the bag, you can find information about it from most manufacturers will have a salt index, and that would be indicative of what's going to happen. Yes, sir?
What's that organic number? I can't read it.
5.9. 5.9%. That's huge. That's pretty significant. And honestly, I don't think that that's a good real number. I'm going to be honest with you. If I see this come up, there was something else in that sample that it wasn't cleaned off enough. It probably had a little fatty material in it or something like that. So when they did the ignition test on that, it burned up extra material that was not technically soil structure. It had extra material that probably shouldn't have been there. If you send a soil sample, they're not going to bother in there to clean them all off and throw roots away and stuff like that. There's a little bit of acceptable matter, but in reality, that would feel like a very squishy lawn. Like you would be kind of like squishing through that if it were that high. So they have to make adjustments sort of based on that. So if this guy only sampled at like a 3-inch depth, he's going to get a lot of extra material that wasn't necessarily there. We want to see this test down to 6 inches, okay? This is testing down as like an 8-inch, is what he has marked on here, but I doubt it was that high. They just did a volume of soil to come up with that, and there's where these numbers come from.
What about kelp or salt?
What's that?
What about kelp? Kelp?
No, not at all. No, I mean, it's a plant that's filtering that stuff anyway. Yes?
John, how about preparing for, soil test is obvious, you want to send the soil, you just made a great point, that some people leave the roots and things like that. How should we
Yes.
prepare to send the sample off to the lab?
Okay, so that is a good question. Everything is based, in soil testing, it's on 6 inches of soil. 6 inches of soil across an acre is 2 million pounds. Everything on here is done by parts per million. If you see something on here that's 67 parts per million, multiply that times 2, that's how many pounds of that nutrient are available in the soil. Everybody follow along with that pretty well? All right, good. So, here's how you have to do this. When you take a soil sample, you don't want anything living in it, right? So if you're gonna cut a core, and you're gonna use a core, you're gonna break off the top. And you're basically looking at between about 3 inches and down. that's where you're gonna do it. Because there will be a skewed number if you're taking just a short, shallow sample. Like I said earlier, his phosphorus level could be significantly higher because it's in the decay. It's near the top. It's usually in the top inch is where the most phos is going to be found because it's still in this state of decay from whatever litter is there. Yes?
I studied soil samples, and it was mostly from decaying organic matter that you would turn into topsoil.
Mm-hmm.
And it looked very similar to that. The phosphorus was super high,
Mhm.
the pH was super high, and organic matter was like 9 or super
In
high.
compost.
But
Yeah.
how much should we, when we put like brand new landscaping, should you use that? How fast would it break down to completely, can you use it on a brand new plant, or you don't wanna use that?
What, compost?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
And you're just gonna keep breaking down until
Yeah.
it will turn.
It's
into-
soil food. At that point, if you're able to incorporate anything into the soil that was once living, that's great.
But since you say since the phosphorus is super high and it's not gonna affect anything, right? It's not gonna, since it's basically just the top layer. We were trying to use it almost as a topsoil.
Okay.
Would that be a good idea or?
It depends. Now, I don't know if anybody else has dealt with this, but sometimes municipalities will do compost piles. Have you ever gotten some of that and used it and sometimes put it on areas and killed things? Has anybody ever seen that? Sometimes leaf litter, there's some stuff where there is such a high concentration of acids that it will cause problem or burning. That can happen. But most of the time, if you are incorporating organic matter into soil, you're just doing good. That's a good thing.
Hey, John. I'm looking at some of our soil samples here,
Yes.
and one of the things that I have not been very good at is knowing what numbers are acceptable. So like I'm looking at CECs on this one, organic matter, soluble salts. And I don't know what the
Let's do
range
this. That's what we're gonna do right now.
should be.
Let me see if I have a slide on that. Not right there. I know, I'm pretty sure I have that coming up. But let me tell you how to do this K saturation zone. Your K is gonna be somewhere between 1 and 5% saturation. That's about how you're gonna want out of that one. In your magnesium, you're looking between 10 and 20%. 20% being the max. Yes.
Wouldn't the soil be holding more moisture because of the mag level too?
Yes, likely. More than likely. And that also, that can relate over to this organic matter as well. If there's more soil moisture. Calcium between 60 and 70%, up to 80. 80 is actually okay. 60 to 80. That's your range.
These are, I know these are, this is a different sample than,
What do you got? Spit some numbers.
so CEC 4.5,
Okay, that's sand.
this is Florida.
Yep.
pH 8.3,
Calcium's gonna be on the top, and so is phosphorus.
organic matter 0.7,
Yep. This is sand. This is a typical Florida test.
soluble salts 135,
Parts per million? Or 1.35? What does it say?
135 parts per million.
Okay.
All right, what else did you ask me?
Do you have saturations? Hydrogen, potassium? You have, under the CEC, is there a percentage with cations?
Because what you're looking for, the way they have this laid out is a little different. No.
Agro. No, there's not enough detail. I'm gonna tell you guys, get a detailed test if you're trying to solve a problem. Don't do a cheap one. There's usually 3 versions.
See what I'm talking about now, right?
Yeah.
That's why it's hard to.
Missing some pieces, but we can work with some of that stuff, but.
I've got Green County Fertilizer.
Anyway. So, but what he just was talking about is sand. We're gonna get into that so you can understand what the CEC is, but I wanna run through some of this and you'll kind of follow along with me now. So, based on those pH readings, we're gonna check what we're gonna do as far as lime or calcium recommendations, if we're gonna end up using gypsum, or if we're gonna use dolomitic, calcitic, what it might be. Low organic matter soils. will typically require more liming in, well, one direction or another. It's going to be requiring some calcium, okay? So this is just basically on our lime and calcium regs. Lime must be chosen based on magnesium or sulfur needs, okay? Everybody know the difference between that stuff, right? Calcitic is the highest level of calcium. Dolomitic has a good measure of magnesium in it, it's bringing a balance, and gypsum is calcium and sulfur. So if you're bringing pH down, or you have poorly drained soils that are tight, that's what you would use, is gypsum on a high pH system. If it was low pH, then we're going to be bringing it up with lime in one form or another. If the magnesium is super high, we're not going to use dolomitic, we need to use calcitic. And again, what I said earlier, the finer the grind, the faster it works, the better you're going to be, okay? Calcium will cause potassium, phosphorus, and sulfur blocks and make the soil too porous to hold nutrients. High calcium equals high drainage. That's something you should know. The higher the calcium, the faster things are passing through it. So if we get out of whack, we're going to have to bring up some of these other elements to start filling in space so that we're not getting such a flush through, okay? This is not a true mathematic equation, but it's pretty damn close. A loose calculation, if you want to do your own line recommendation based on pH, so let's say you've got a pH of 5, okay? The pH of 5, and all you want to get it to or move it to a 6 in a clay soil, you're basically going to need 5 pounds to raise it 0.1, so you're going to need about 50 pounds to get it that direction. Okay, if you want to go up even further, now we're getting into numbers that you're not going to be able to apply on one application. So 50 to 75 pounds is actually pretty safe to put out per 1,000 feet. Pretty safe. Once we start going above that, you're going to have to split it into multiple labs, or you're just going to block off the soil surface for a while, and that's no way. This is the limestone pit I'm considering investing in. All right. Baselines. This is important. Okay, so this is going to vary a little bit based on soil type too. So this is sort of a midline recommendation on something that is, more into the middle CEC zone, but it'll give you something to look at. For phos, this is about where we want to be. If we've got 100 pounds of available phos in the soil, we're doing pretty good. That's pretty good. Okay, we like that. Potassium, up to 200 pounds in the soil. And this is a good range. That's a healthy range. But I'm seeing reports come back with like 7 pounds. That's not so good. That's going to take a long time. So if we're going to do a correction on that, if you got a test in your potassium, and I did look at what you had on that particular chart.
It's always low for us because of how sandy it is. It just moves right through it. It doesn't stick around.
So when you think about that for a second, let's say that we have 40 pounds available and we have a goal of actually seeing our soil saturations increase with the loss. There's some calculations that have to be made on what's going to go out, but there is no way that I'm going to take something that has 40 parts per million or 40 pounds, let's say there's 40 pounds of potassium in the soil, and get it to 150 in one season. That lawn will be dry and dead. You can't do it that fast. It takes a long time for stuff to deplete to a level. It doesn't take as long to replenish it, but you can't do it all at once. So if you have stuff that's super out of whack, it becomes a multi-application or multi-year program to get it into balance. So if you're dealing with soils that are absolute junk in certain areas where it's just coming out of canals or it's very anaerobic, and it never has had anything growing in it, you've got to take some time before you can get it to the level where it's actually functioning with you. Okay, so that's some of that soil that plants don't like to go into, but that's pretty much it. In here, so see this number, 400 ppm, if you've got less than that in calcium, everything's dead. It doesn't really make a difference. If you find anything that's that low, you're going to be shocked. Most clay soils are going to be in like the 5, 7, 8,000 parts per million. It's way up. But a heavy, high CEC soil can function very well with 10,000 parts per million of calcium. Sand does really well right around 1,000. Okay, that's a big weight difference. You just think about the whole density of the soil itself and what's in there making everything function. So, we don't really need a whole lot. If we have to do a magnesium application to change things, it doesn't take much. You can get a bag of magnesium sulfate and do most corrections of any magnesium you would ever need, because if we're trying to run into this like 30 to 60 part per million, we can correct that fast. Boron, same thing. You're talking like A pound or two of that stuff is enough to correct any deficiency. Above that, you'll kill all the plants. So the way the nutrients work and fit together are sort of important. Nitrogen, obviously, if we're doing baselines, good to know organic matter so that we know. We don't have to know grass type, okay? If somebody in here said, well, let's take a poll here. This will be fun. I'm just going to do 4 grasses, and you guys tell me which one uses the most nitrogen. You ready? Okay, show of hands. Bermuda. 1, 2, couple. All right. St. Augustine. Okay, all right. Bluegrass. Fescue. Okay, so everybody thinks they all use the most? They all are the same. If you tell me, well, Bermuda's a nitrogen hog, I'm going to tell you, well, I guess all grass is a hog, because if I get a recommendation from anybody that sells fertilizer, NPK, it's always the same. It's always 4 pounds. Or if you live in Florida, they might recommend 6 pounds now. They don't care. Just put whatever on there. People buy it. So you need to know that it's like a 4-pound thing. That's what's recommended. 4 pounds. Basically 180 pounds of N per acre per year. That's what you're putting out there. That's a lot. That's a lot. Okay? So, what can your soil hold? This is a good thing to know. What kind of soil do you really have? I've gotten quite a few tests of people that say, I got heavy, heavy red clay. And then we get a soil report and we find out they don't have heavy red clay. They have a very sandy, coarse soil that's got a ton of iron in it that gives it a red tint. And they think it's heavy clay. But the iron is a binder. So it seems like it's clay, but it's not. It's not weathered soil. And therefore, it doesn't require heavy doses of things at a time. It requires lighter doses more often. That's what you get. Okay, so you need to know what your soil can take. And when you're talking about sandy soil, there's some, again, sort of loose and fast math you can do. If you take your CEC number, whatever that number is, like yours said 4.5 or whatever, something like that, multiply it times 2, that's about the max amount of nitrogen that you're going to be able to put on that at a time. The rest is leaching off. That's a 1/4 pound of it. That's not very much. But that is your effective rate of what that can actually hold. About a 1/4 pound per application is what he can do. If he puts anything else on there, it's run. It's going somewhere. So that would require you to do what? To get a good measure out there, what would you have to do in order to run a program if all you can put out this 1/4 pound at a time? How would you do that? You'd have to be there more often.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it, right? So you're having to feed more. So what they've done, and this is where things get really effed up, in my opinion. Okay, this is where things get messed up from an academic level, is what has happened here is the recommendation, they've increased the rate of N while there's a screaming about how much there's, runoff and leaching and all this stuff, but they're increasing the amount of N because they're trying to get so much out there, it takes so long for it to wash through that the plant has a better opportunity by loading it up with more. That seems like a bad plan to me. That's like saying, well, I know I can only eat this plate of food, but because I'm thinking I might skip breakfast, I'm going to triple this up and I should feel fine. You're just wasteful at that point. You're going to get sick, things are going to happen, it's not going to work well. So you need to know what the limits of your soil. Now, kick this up the other direction to clay that might have a reading of 30 on the CECs. You can put down 1.5 pounds of N with no trouble. That's kind of cool, but do you think you need to? But you can. Just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? But it has a greater capacity to take things. That means that you can load stuff up and come back at a later date. Clay will give you the ability to run longer between visits. That's what you get, the higher the clay content. The higher the organic matter content, the even further you can go. It just gets more and more as these things weather down. Now this is my soil test. I've shared this with people before. I have a surplus of nutrients that in my opinion, the only thing wrong with it is the pH. And it's not wrong because the grass is thriving. But I would like that to be a little bit lower. But look at what I've got going on here. This was a clean sample. That's 5%. I was very happy with that. Like I said, neglect goes a long way. I don't feed really much nitrogen at all. In the now I'm coming to 4 years in this house, I've put down maybe a half a pound of N per 1,000, maybe, in 4 years, coming up in 4 years. I don't use that to do what I need to. So I know where my levels are going to be, that I'm functioning off of a minor element scale over here, like this. My potassium is a crazy amount. It's nuts. The soil is dark. It's also crumbly. It's very airy. The roots are pushing about 18 inches deep now at this point. It cruises down there. This is a clay loam soil. That's available. So that means that I have the capacity to load the crap out of this. But I've got 100 and almost 60 pounds of available phosphorus. There's never been phosphorus put on that lawn. Not one time. This is just what's happening by function. I put the potassium out that's in our products currently. That's all that's going on here. So there would have been some stuff in the natural soil that's making that happen. Okay? But this is how mine looks. Sulfur is actually pretty good. It's moving into somewhat of a midline range. So the plant's functioning off that, keep it pretty sweet. This in here is what's keeping weeds out of my lawn. My balance of nutrients is keeping weeds out of the lawn. Look, I got my calcium right around that 80%. Here's my potassium. See, it's high here. It's a little high on this side. My magnesium's in balance that way. I have a low salt content. No real hydrogen to speak of because I'm up on the high side of the pH scale, so it's not making it acidic anywhere in there. It's just cruising. So, but again, you can walk through that test. I would say my pH is a little high, but bluegrass can tolerate it. It'll take up to an 8 pH, no problem. No big deal. So I can play with that, or I can leave it and let it naturally adjust over time, and that's more the plan now at this point, is I'm just going to let the organic acids and the breakdown and the decay of the organic matter do the work for me. That's how it's going to work. Anybody have questions about that? That's just kind of sort of proof. So here's a different one. And some of these, if you see them up here, you might recognize one that's something that you sent to me. I could be using some that you guys have sent. This one is out of Florida. This was near Tampa. Okay? See our nitrogen recommendations here? Can you guys read that? 5 to 6. 5 to 6. The reason that this one is 5 to 6 is because it was sent to this company for a soil test. Okay? If you go to your fertilizer dealer to get a recommendation, you will be buying fertilizer. Okay? I had a guy in one of my CEU classes who used to work for Site One, and he came up after he saw this and he laughed. He's like, yeah, man, that's what we used to do. We just basically look at those things and say, you need 24-211 and sell it. You know what I'm talking about.
That was me.
That was you.
Yeah. Years ago, let's go.
That's right. You just do it. It comes in, you know what you're going to do. You got it on the floor, you're going to sell it anyway, because it doesn't really matter. You're going to hand this to somebody, and they're going to look at it, and you're going to be like, here's what you need. Right?
Yep.
That's what you do. Is that a perpetrator? Is that evil to a person? It's not. Yes.
It's not until after you leave Let's Go and actually in the business realizing those guys don't have a clue what they're talking about. All they are is push more fertilizer, push more fertilizer.
Sales.
So do yourself a favor. Don't get Site One or Let's Go, any of those guys to do a soil sample. Send it off to a reputable lab.
Yes, send it to a lab. Now, there's nothing wrong with what we're getting here as far as the information that's coming back, but it is still missing a lot of stuff. It's missing a lot of stuff, because this is one like, yeah, we'll do a soil sample for you, bang, get it back, you have it in like a day or two. I wanted to do like a cartoon about that, like a little comic strip that showed a guy coming in with like money and a bag of dirt.
Yeah.
And he hands it to the guy, and the guy takes the money in the bag of dirt, and then he goes like this and comes back out with a bag of fertilizer. Your test says you need this, congratulations, good boy. But that's the reality, that's the quick change of how a lot of this stuff goes. They're just basically, you know, there'd be a second page of this that has the exact analysis of what they need, and it is in stock. That's how it works. Okay, so don't think that there's anything sinister going on here. Their job, as a fertilizer dealer, your job is to do what? Sell fertilizer. It's not to interpret soil tests. It's to make sure that you're selling fertilizer and selling these services to basically give proof that they need certain fertilizer. But these recommendations are from the university. But there's no real data on here to support this. There really isn't. I mean, okay, we've got almost 200 pounds of phosphorus here, but we've got a recommendation of a 1/4 pound down here anyway, okay? We've got 220 pounds of potassium, and we've got a recommendation of 4 pounds annually here. Good question. Oh, okay. I saw that finger like this, I wasn't sure that was something. So when you're looking at this, we're getting recommendations that have nothing to do with this. Literally nothing. So that's just the number. If you walk in there, you're going to get a mixed bag of fur. I feel like we can do better. So when I send soil tests off, I make sure they do not put a recommendation on there. Don't put a recommendation. Let me look at these myself, because you guys will get immediately distracted by the bottom box. That's where you're gonna go. Like, I don't understand these numbers. This looks like something. Oh, here's what I need. Right? That's fair, because that's how I used to look at it. I mean, I'd be like, yes. Don't need that. I'm still gonna do what I was gonna do anyway. But let's interpret this in the way that we wanna do it, you know, to take a look at what we can do here. So, across the board, if we're just going to look at limiting factors, all right? That's what we're gonna look at here. So, we can quickly identify that, yes, there are some low points that are going to have to be filled in, but we've got a fairly good, adequate line here, all right? High level of phosphorus makes me wonder why I need to put me out. It does. That just makes me wonder, okay? This level of potassium, this means that we're gonna add in around 180 pounds of K through the course of the year. That's pretty high. It's not going to take that much to get this to really adjust into where it should be. Let's see if there's, so I don't have any CEC, okay, 10.7. Okay, so we're still in a sort of a sandy zone. Still sandy, but moving into a little bit of loam. This is actually starting to change, it's a little more weathered. So now we can see that some of these levels are going to have to bump up in order to buffer for the change in the particle sizes. So that's why they're, you know, this is a number to know. And I believe I have some information on what each one of those are, but that might be tomorrow's thing. So I'm gonna keep on sliding through. Does anybody have questions so far? I got a few, all right. Yes.
I mean, with the Site One, that's a company that's pretty close to me. Can we get those numbers without looking at the bottom? Can we make?
You need a real get a full test. You want a full panel. So whatever they can do to give you every bit of information. You want organic matter? You want to know the entire CEC look? You want to know your minors? Okay, one thing I've seen in a lot of Florida tests lately is iron is getting excessive. And do you know why it's getting excessive? Because everybody puts out that damn TNO. Are you familiar with this stuff? It's a Lesco product. It's iron. It's everybody runs it. They're always running it all the time, and it's getting stuck in the soil. And you know what that's going to do? It's actually going to make the roots not want to be there anymore. Okay? Everybody heard of Fiesta? Do you know this product? It's concentrated iron that kills things. Okay? If you build up iron to levels, it becomes toxic. Roots don't want to live there anymore.
What's high on the iron side?
Do you have a chart with colors on it? It's the red one. I'll look at that, we can see. So typically, if you have soil, if you live in the clay belt, you know, if you're living in Georgia, you're in the Carolinas, Tennessee, parts of Texas, you're going to have a lot of iron in the soil. It's going to be tied up. That's ferric iron, not ferrous iron. Ferrous iron would be the plant nutrient. Ferric iron would be the rusting out stuff in there. There is a way to get that to move, and oftentimes you are going to have to apply lime. Right? That's what we're going to have to do, because they block each other out and get things moving. The more iron you have in there, the tighter the soil starts to get, the less goes in there. It has got 4 charges on it, okay? 4 positive charges on that cation, so it's fairly tight. That is the same as your nitrogen. So those two can kind of, they're going to move around a little bit, but they can bind up your soil, especially that iron side. Now, sorry, that was a little quick, but I have a lot more talk on this with CECs tomorrow, so I don't spoil it. This is, I put this slide up in a considerable amount of presentations that I do. I live by it. I think it's super important. I think that you guys should understand it. I did a YouTube video about it. It's so simple. All you have to do is imagine that soil test is fitting right here. And these are the yellow and red and green bars. Is that? That's what this is, okay? So, in order to maintain a soil equilibrium, in order to have every nutrient functioning together, we need to make sure that our barrel slats are totally full, so there are no leaks or holes in the boat, right? So if I look across that chart that was down here, we want to look for holes in the boat. And these are the holes in the boat. Got it? That's all that is. So we need to be looking here first to see what we need to adjust to get things bumping in the proper direction. You follow me? So that's what you want to pay attention to in the first place, unless things are getting really super high. Okay? So here's another one. I couldn't tell you who sent me this thing, but this is Spectrum Analytics. I think that they do a wonderful job as far as how the information that they give you. They will give you recommendations as far as what fertility is needed, but it still follows Land Grant University. It doesn't really change off of anything else. So take a look at this one. So, same thing. What are we going to look at first? We just want to run down the list. Soil pH. We want to see if that is when we have to do any adjustments. We need to buffer it. We need to change anything. They have an optimum on here of 6 to 6.8. This is probably in an area where they're growing a warm season grass. This is likely warm season grass that this was sent in on. So the range is going to be lower. It's probably a Bermuda grass lawn. I could probably guess that. Organic matter is pretty good. I like that. I like that 3.3%. It's wonderful. But let's now jump down into these saturations here. I've got almost 85% on my cal, and I'm low on my magnesium, and also that reflects down here. Right? So these are available nutrients. This is soil solution. It's two different things, but there are times when those cross. So we're going to start looking at holes in the boat. I see that we've got low boron. He's talking about God knows what. So we've got low. This is going to require some adjustment. We're probably going to need to do something like that. You're probably going to need, like, I don't know, 4 tablespoons. That's going to fix that. It really doesn't take much, okay? So if we go up here and check what our boron level is, 0.7 parts per million, needed 1.7 to 2.6. When I say that you just need teaspoons, that's all you need, right? That's a total on the high side of 5 pounds total per acre of soil. Per 2 million pounds of soil, 5 pounds would be high. So, how do you test it?
How would you adjust that?
How would you adjust it? Simply, this is easy math on this one. So let's say we're right in this range, we've got 0.7, and let's say that we want to go up to that. Take it to this number, right here. Let's go to 1.7. 1 part per million change. How much is that? 2 pounds an acre. Borax. Borax, strong as mule. 2 pounds of it. Throw it in your spray tank. You've now fixed that hole in the boat. The next time you test it, it's going to be right here. That didn't cost you anything. And that can contribute to lockout of other items. You see, so some of this other stuff, when you start looking at holes in the boat, this can affect your other minor elements. It can also affect cell division of the plant when boron is not acting correctly. It's going to affect the regulation of nitrogen if it's not correct. If that number goes up here, your grass is going to die. You can use it to kill grass too. Actually, anything on here. If you want to kill grass, I can give you a level that you got to put it out to kill your grass. It's not that hard. Take whatever they tell you to do and multiply it by like 0.1, because right now it's on the threshold of killing grass anyway. It's true.
When you're applying, like boron in such small quantities, does your volume of water matter?
Nope. The better, actually, the more mix you can get out, the better broadcast you get. It just works better. I mean, if you wanted to do small, that's fine. Boron is not like super water soluble, but at that level, if you're spraying in like 100 gallons an acre or something like that, no problem. 20 gallons an acre, that would be fine too. What you'd have to look out for, the lower volume that you get down to, is if that sits around on the leaf tissue, you could burn it. So that's when you'd want to kind of watch out a little bit. So, hole in the boat, fix the hole. We got to do that. And then we're just going to move across the board. Magnesium, it's the same type of thing. Get up here, take a look at your numbers, see what it is. They have these recommendations, Spectrum does, based on your soil type. Your CEC is going to dictate what this range is right here. So you can work off those numbers very easily, because a lot of the time there's not going to be a recommendation for you to adjust your minor elements. That's not common. It's only gonna be maybe sulfur, occasionally iron, but not that often. So you're going to have to come up with your own computation to figure out where you want some of these numbers to be. And the way that this one would adjust here, is it worth it to do in one season? Probably not. We're actually in a fine zone. That's not really gonna cause too many problems. The boron's gonna be an issue on this one. And then you've got these other elements that are high. High zinc, high iron, okay, calcium is where it is. And these will contribute to some acidification, and it'll block out some of this phosphorus, and even block out some of this calcium, because the metals start to get too high. So in some cases, yes, sir?
Obviously, I cannot see what
Yes.
you're looking at, but that's another thing. But do you actually put in Butler's chart when it talks about relation, like in your iron, if you're seeing deficiencies, you go back to that and look how the reactions.
For pHs? Are you talking about that one?
For nutrients.
Yeah.
Nutrient lockups.
So sometimes, I usually just look at the big ones, just to see, like, if I've got too much calcium and I'm blocking off some phos, I'm typically going to see that my potassium's low. I'm gonna wanna bump that up to kind of start moving some cal out of the way. So you can play with some in that direction if you've got high points. This actually, what would be kind of fun to do on this particular test would be I would apply this into this line. That's what I would do on this one. I would actually send the calcium up a little bit, try to start breaking up and unlocking some of these other zinc and iron on that particular one. Get a little bit more water flow and start getting things moving, because that, I think, would be a better option here. Because this soil, like I said, it was sand, but it's moving into a loam category. And I'm not certain, hold on, let me just skip ahead real quick, I'm gonna tell you something. No. Yeah. Okay, I'll talk a little bit about this statement right here. So, base saturations and management. Calcium and magnesium relationship, very important. So that's what we were talking about earlier, where we're talking about dolomitic, calcitic, gypsum, what we're going to apply. If we're just going to do magnesium sulfate, one of the biggest recommendations that I've seen that I've had to do for a lot of people this year is KMS or KMag. If you guys are familiar with that, it's because we are dealing with a alkaline soil that's low in potassium, low in magnesium. I can put those two, that's one product that has everything in it that we need to do to correct that, and you can buy it pretty regularly, get it out, and it'll adjust some of these other items. Everybody familiar with KMag or KMS? Yeah, okay. It's good stuff. It works really well. It corrects a lot of deficiencies, and it's easy to get it sprayable. If you get it from somebody like Diamond K, that's something that can go out. So let's take a look at this one. What does everybody see who can see the screen?
pH.
pH is really low. This is going to require a literal shit ton of lime. This is one. Maybe even a metric shit ton. It's going to be a lot. If we want to get that up to a 6, in this particular soil, CEC is 9-ish. I don't know, we might be able to do it on 70 pounds on this guy. We can probably get it there on that. Be in a good range, about 70 pounds of lime. And now let's jump down. Let's look at our saturations. What do you guys see here? What was a good number on the calcium? Anybody remember?
80%.
Hey, let's go between 60 and 80. See how low that number is? That's kind of bad. So when I take these numbers and I add them up, so I've got 56, 57. All right, so we've got, let's say 60% of the soil is this saturation. You guys have a guess on what the hydrogen is? Yeah, that's right. Good job. So 40% is hydrogen. That's the acid portion. All right, so hydrogen is taking up a significant amount of the space on the soil particle right now. That's stuff that's come off of plant decay, that's being exuded by the roots. That's where the hydrogen comes from. But when we're dealing with cationic exchange, when we're trying to exchange cations, hydrogen's taking up too much space on soil surfaces. So we are going to lime the living crap out of it and bring this number up so the hydrogen starts detaching away. Yes, sir?
What's the maximum amount of lime you can put out at one time?
That's a good question.
50
What's that?
pounds per thousand.
You can go more than that.
Okay.
You can.
Okay.
Yeah, so 75 you can get away with. There was a recommendation on soil tests that I looked at from, I don't know who had it. They had 150 pounds per thousand recommendation. You cannot get that out in 1 hour.
So would you use calcitic lime on that?
On this one, nope. This will take dolomitic because if I start bringing up that calcium level, that's going to go down.
Your mag will go down.
Yep. Right?
You want your mag a little lower, don't you?
Well, what's gonna happen is they're gonna reach sort of a state of equilibrium, because the calcium is gonna come up at about 4 times as fast as the mag. So this is probably gonna end up balancing out, I don't know, maybe 20%, and it may not even change a whole lot. But the calcium is gonna jump like crazy. And now I'm gonna be able to carry more stuff down into the soil. Okay? All right. This one does not have the chart on it, so now you just have to look at numbers. There's not a graph that you can follow, but there are numbers here that give you an indicator of where things need to be. So our FOS is low, right? This is a little low. It's not low by a lot. That's something that can be corrected very simply. And honestly, you could even ignore that, because you might be able to get a release of calcium by adjusting, or release of FOS by adjusting that calcium. That's more often than not what's going to happen. When we start to change these soil solutions around, we get a little more freedom in some of our other nutrients. Okay? So oftentimes, you have to start here just to make the changes so that you can see these other nutrients be more available. All right? Who's with that? Everybody? Yes. We're good? We're doing good? Good. Not boring anybody? Are you feeling more confident about reading a soil report? Yes.
Was soil obviously different from, like, even within one lawn, like front yard and
Yes.
backyard? I mean,
Yes.
you have to get different soil tests.
Okay, let's talk about testing protocols. I think that's a great idea if you guys are actually gonna do this. I would say get 5 samples from a homeowner's lawn, all right? Get a bucket, go get them from like the center of the front yard, somewhere over there where the grass doesn't grow so well, somewhere in the backyard. Get a little grid, put it into your bucket, shake it all about, put it in a bag and send it off. Just go ahead and do it that way. The only time that you would separate that out is if you had a very bad problem somewhere. Otherwise, you can pretty much manage that scenario. But a lot of times in neighborhoods, front yards are very different than backyards. Okay, especially in areas where they have graded out, say a road or whatever, houses are built to an elevation that matches something that was existing in the back. The front is fill, the back is natural. And so you can have different things. And, you know, you see that a lot in Georgia. There's big differences between front and back and grass types. Yes.
Do you have a chart of some sort with a breakdown of dolomite and calcitic and what effect it has on the nutrients? Or is there a good resource for that?
Yes. Yes, you can actually find anything about lime. There's so many articles written and charts that are available. If you pull lime, mainly, typically what's available to you guys is dolomitic. You gotta go hunt for other stuff. You're just gonna have to, because that's commonly what's out there. And if you already have high magnesium, you're not really doing yourself any sort of favors by putting it out there if you don't need it. This is one of those times where you're just adding stuff for the sake of what you can get. It's not really much, yes.
Taking the soil sample out, pushing it down 8 inches roughly, you say 4?
Yeah, 6. Clean the top, break the top off, make sure there's no roots, crumble that stuff right down into a bucket, mix it all together, send it off. They don't need much. Yes?
What if the material sucks and you can't get down that far?
Well, then you probably have a deficiency or excess of some sort in the soil, and likely it's going to have to be dealt with. It's likely going to be excess, more of something. So get as much as you can. Because roots can only go, if you can only probe so far, roots can only go so far. They're gonna try to get into that mineral, but likely not. You just need to sample your soil medium. Okay? This is the important piece, I think, for everybody to know in here. Having low or high CEC, not an indicator of healthy soil. Don't have a conversation with somebody that goes like, well, you're so lucky. Look at all them high CECs. Doesn't mean anything, it just means that it's more weathered, it's older. Congratulations, you have old dirt. There's no difference, there's just a difference in the type of the soil, the way it looks, the way its life cycle is currently, and what you might have to do to treat it going forward and adjust your programs accordingly. Because in Florida, there's so many people that are running monthly programs, because honestly, you get a better result. You can use less material and get a better result. Yes?
So when we talk about long-term pH correction.
Yes.
So in my area, I'd say 10% of my lawns is probably in the 5 to 5.5 pH. So I get a new customer, I take the soil sample, I tell them, hey, this first year,
maybe I gotta do 2 apps at 50+ pounds of lime, then what do I say going in year 2? Do I say re-soil test and assess, or can I give them something better than just let's hope it gets better next year?
So liming is like many things that you would have to do for a long time if you're not doing anything else to change soil structure. So soil is sort of what it is, right? Whatever you start with, it took eons to be there. It's going to take you some time to change it. And really the best way, you can lime and lime and lime. All right, you can do that. And over time, there will be these minor changes where if you had a 5 pH, in a couple of years it might be 5.4. Might. That's a big might, okay? Because you've got such a tight soil at that level. The thing that changes that is decaying organic matter. That's what changes it. Because the greater root mass, the greater decay that we get in the soil, technically, the higher the CECs will be. That means that your soil can handle more. That also means that it handles changes as far as the pH. It doesn't get affected by like a huge rain or something like that. You're not going to lose, any gains that you get from mineralization because there's more of it. So let me put it in perspective. Okay, tomorrow we're talking about CECs, and I'm pretty sure I do not have a slide on here to talk about it. I just want to make sure here one more time. Okay. So, just so everybody knows, CEC is basically size particle. Okay, sand being the largest, ending at clay. Okay, so it goes through this process of weathering to get down into that point of where CECs are higher. That just means more surface area. Put it in perspective, clay, really weathered clay is probably going to be in the mid-30s, 30 to 35 CEC. Organic matter is 150. What do we want? We want to build up that organic matter. We want to have that working into the soil. You get much more out of humus than you do out of clay. You get a lot more out of clay than you do out of sand. But it just depends on how you're filling that cup with other nutrients and how it's going to release them back into the plant or hold on to them. Okay, so it's not good or bad. It's just what's so, right? But if you want long-term changes to soil, it's going to come from organic matter. Now, I threw this in here just because this, we talked about this earlier, and I wanted to bring that back up, because now you're getting sort of a connection here on why some of this stuff is what it is, okay? Low calcium, dry soil, low sulfur, poor pH management, okay? All of those things that we were talking about with saturations can correct a lot of these weed infestation and issues. It's just, seeing what's what. Okay, this was just sort of a quick one that I wanted to throw up and remind people to be thinking about what weeds are present when you're dealing with your lawns, okay? So let's go into the program building piece for a second. This is, again, it's very simple. NPK is not a reason to soil test. If you are just wanting to run an NPK program, just put out whatever's available. You don't need to do anything. Save yourself some money and go to work, okay? Don't do it if that's all you're looking for. I went to a company in Tennessee to look at some stuff. The guy soil tests every single one of his customers every single year. He's got stacks and stacks of paper this high. I looked at it and I said, this is awesome. What do you do to correct him? He said, nothing. I said, great, we have nothing more to talk about because he's just going to put out what he puts out. He doesn't really care. He just does it because that's part of his business model. Doesn't care. And I looked at it, and really it was a soil test that tested for potassium and phosphorus. That was all that was in there. He charged his customer $65 for it. It cost him about $8. It's just a business model. No reason to change anything. Guy ran 4200 all year long, put out his potassium with his pre-emergent 007, nothing else. That's all he ran. Nothing else. And I'm like, wow. And I read his website and I thought he was like a kindred spirit. Now, was I let down? Absolutely. Did I really judge him on the spot? Maybe. I don't do business with him, that's too bad. Because he's like, no, I'm good. All right, cool. So, if you're just testing, just for NPK, every website for university, land grant university is going to tell you what to put out in your state. You don't even need it. You don't bother. Just don't bother. Just do what you're going to do. Okay, if you're actually going to try to correct it to make a difference, then do the research. All right? A balanced program always has to include micronutrients. We got to get them out there. That's one of the biggest things that makes a difference. You know, I like to bring this one up because this is where I always talk about the magic formula. There is such a thing as a magic formula if you've never used the formula before. Okay, so people see sometimes, like a rep comes and they say, I got this amazing new thing. It's got manganese and zinc and copper and all this stuff, and you're like, wow, that's sweet. Like, what do I do with it? Oh, you just put it out at this much, it's $1,000 a gallon. Oh, that sounds good. So you go out there and you put it out and it makes the grass super green. You're like, man, that stuff is amazing. And then you go do it again and nothing happens. Well, there's something wrong with the product. No, there's nothing wrong with the product. You corrected a deficiency. Congratulations. That's it. There's no magic. You just fixed the problem that you didn't know you had because you hadn't been putting this stuff out to begin with. There's no magic, just science. All right, running back down through here. So, general overview of neighborhood routes. I really do want you guys to do this. I do. I think it's super important, and you've heard me now say it like 6 times. Test via route. Just do it. Save yourself a ton of money by spending a little bit on the front side. Take the guesswork out of the route. Just go get a few. Take 5 or 10 houses that are on a route. Get a test. Let's get a baseline. Let's carve out something that all of these are lacking and make sure that it's on that truck. Okay? You will save yourself a fortune.
Just regular looking lawns, just an average lawn, nothing.
Whatever.
Okay.
No, they don't have to be crap. I mean, if you manage to, if you have one, that's a one-off. If Mrs. Johnson's lawn sucks, let's take care of Mrs. Johnson. If you've got lawns that are all, you know what your sort of stasis level is, take a few out there. Now, how can we make them better? Let's look for what's missing in those. And you can take that. If you've got 10 trucks, all right, you're going to go take 100 samples. It's going to cost you money. It is. All right, you're going to spend about $3,500 on 100 samples. It's kind of expensive, but it might save you tens and tens of thousands and make you so much on retention. Okay? This is an investment. If you don't want to do that, I understand. That's fine. You can do it however you want to. I'm just trying to make life easier. Greater value to your customer. Okay, so when we talk about like custom fertility programs, there's not really such a thing because how can every lawn be treated differently than the other unless you have a very small amount of them? You can do that. You can be that specialized. You will also be the most expensive guy, and it's fine. Nothing wrong with that. I know there are people who do that. It's cool. I think it's amazing that you have the ability and the flexibility, but if I've got 10,000 customers and they're running 10,000 different programs, no, absolutely not. That's a sales game at that point. You don't even know what your guys are putting out half the time. You're like, just let's do it. But this is a good one. I mean, I tell a story about a company I do business down here with, down in, where are they? Jupiter area. And we switched their entire program off. They were running a quarterly fertilizer program. We got it changed around, got them on a 6-time-a-year thing, running 100% liquid. They were doing granulars and stuff before. And there was a miscommunication somewhere. And I know it wasn't for me. I think. So, basically what happened was this, is we had 3 different branches. We brought product in there. We gave them the rates to put out. They started to apply the rates. And, a couple of months go by. I call, hey, how's everything going? It's going really well. And maybe another month, and I'm like, man, these guys are really big, and they're not ordering much stuff. And they're either putting something else out or something is wrong. I call, hey, I just want to check, how's your stock? I mean, what's your inventory? How's everything going? And like, oh, no, we're good. We've got plenty. One branch needs some. That was always the thing. We need to put it in this branch. They're out. Okay, we keep filling. This is weird, right? And these guys had a ton of customers. I don't know how many thousand, but quite a bit. So I'm like, what the hell is going on? I said, hey, just want to check. Are your guys putting out 15 ounces per 1,000 or per acre? No, I think we're putting per 1,000. That's what's on the sheet. I said, can you please double check that because you have not ordered anything. I need to know what's happening. Oh, he's like, yeah, sure, I'll find out. About an hour later, I get a frenzied phone call. Oh my God, my best guys have been putting out like 15 ounces per acre for like so much time. And I was like, yeah, okay, so how long has this been going on? 8 months. 8 months, and no one has called? I said, don't tell anyone. You need to keep that to yourself. Don't not let them, okay, we need to get that correct, but he's like, well, look, I gotta tell you that the guys were saying they were having concerns because the lawns were starting to fall off. I was starting to fall off. They should be dead. I mean, that's nothing. You have done nothing but spray water on your customers' lawns for the last 8 months. This is terrible. I said, well, how's everything else? He said, well, interestingly enough, the branch that's going through the most product, we had a tech there that we were gonna fire, and we have had customers calling and talking about how great their lawns look and what a great job he's doing. And we were gonna get rid of him because he was getting the most complaints. He went from having the most to the least. He followed directions, and he was armed with something that he never had before, and the lawns were humming. And this guy, the one that was about to lose his job, was winning. He won because he was the one that they all said screwed up. The 20-year vets didn't pay attention and put 15 ounces out per acre. Check your rates. But don't run that program, I will go broke. So, but what is interesting about that is there was some level of nutrition, and honestly, I think that they made some gains in the soil quality by just giving it some neglect, because we haven't had a problem since. Like, the thing is just cruising right along. So, that story goes to this: greater confidence for your technician. Poor fired Sam is now the leader out there because he gained confidence in what was happening in the field. You should give that to your technicians. I think that's important. You want them to be armed with knowledge, equipment, and materials to do a good job. And you can discover what the holes are for them so they don't have to be out there guessing what's going wrong. Fair? Good investment in your business. All right? So, in summary, understand your soil type. Great to know. Know what your CECs are. Get a good look. You need to see what's going on out there. It'll positively impact your budget for both your fertilizer and for your chemical. Can't stress that enough. The healthier that we make the soil, the less chemical costs you're going to have. Those just go hand in hand. I'm not going to tell you that if you just use a particular product that you are going to be able to use less controls. That's not how it works. Soil has to be built in order for that to happen. If I say, hey, go put this out and apply 25% less or 50% less of whatever, I've heard all kinds of stuff. Only put a quarter rate of your 2,4-D down, that's not going to kill any weeds. Don't do that. That's not how it works. You're going to get less populations. What you might find is if you are dealing with Weedzilla all the time and you're blanket apping everything, but we start to make the soil healthy and there's less weed population, you don't have to put that in your tank every single goddamn time. You could actually send guys out there with a backpack and just shoot that one weed that's in the lawn. How nice would that be? Pretty good. That impacts your budget big time. Backpack it and move along. The ability to outperform competitors in the marketplace by tending to the soil will set you apart. That's geographical testing. Stressing it again. I'm going to tell you guys will be more successful if you start to do that. The confidence for your technical and field knowledge. This again, applicators. You've got employees out there that are struggling, especially in this current marketplace, guys who have never applied lawn care products before, that you're training in, I don't know, a few days and giving them the truck keys. It's all right, that's reality right now. You're buried, you have work, you need to find people, and they don't know this stuff. It's your job to make sure that they understand this, and you can fix some of those potholes for them. And over time, your inputs will lower. The healthier the soil is, the less stuff that we need to add to it. And then we can get to the fun part where we're just keeping grass dark green. That's the best part. Thick, dark green grass that you're not having to just constantly chase your tail and fix stuff all the time. That's all we really want. That's what your customer wants, and that's what's going to make them be a 20-year customer. As this guy came in, he takes care of everything. He gave me a brief explanation of how we do things. We're going to fix this. We're going to go. Bang. He told me what he put out, and now it's clean and green, and we're off the races. Questions? Yes, sir, Mr. Lindsay.
You need to be testing for soil salts.
It's less important. You're going to see them. We're seeing more bicarbonates in the soil, basically due to irrigation water and things like that. Salts are drying, so the only time that I would really be concerned with it is if there is effluent or secondary water that's being used, and it is getting some of those free-flowing salts in there. You're going to have to use sulfur more often. That's how you solve it in pond reclamation, by doing sulfur burners. Your lawn's no different. So you might have to do that. But you'll notice that the grass is just dry. No matter how much you water it, it's dry. That means that your salts are out of whack.
And is there a limit, a high side on the magnesium that scares you?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it like way off the chart before. Eventually, when nutrients start to get way out of whack and super high in the soil, roots stop wanting to go there. Okay? If I put pictures of like brown lawns up on the screen, and I just had like 10 of them, I said, what's wrong with this one? And you guys just pick. You go, oh, that's water. Like, no, that's too much potassium. I can just say whatever I want to. I could, because it's brown grass. But that could be why, right? So that piece you have to pay attention to. You have to really take a look. Is this dry grass or dead grass, right? You have to be taking a look to know if this is a water issue or if it's a nutrient issue. There are things that you will see just by the way that the grass stands up, lays over, color of brown, color of dry. Is it off blue? Is it off green? There are things that you can pick pretty quickly just from a nutrient standpoint that way. But yeah, I've seen magnesium off the charts, and you just have to start loading calcium to balance it back up.
Do the soil test, because we just see the green bars, like we're using weight.
Just get the whole thing. Make sure you get the whole test. Because even Waypoint goes thin a lot. So just get the good ones. That's all I'd say. Spend a little extra money. It's like, I don't know, $8 or $10 more.
Yeah.
And if you're already charging your customer for it anyway, you're making a profit. What do you care? All right. Now that's true. How many people do that and charge their customers? Quite a few. It's a good part of your business, right? You charge like what? How much for a soil test?
55.
$55. What's it cost you?
18.
There you go. That's a good margin. That's pretty good. Pay a little more for that test and get the whole thing. You're making money on it, and the customer's investing in you. Do them a service to make sure that we can get the whole
If
thing.
you sweet talk your rep, I mean,
They'll do it for you.
I don't buy FERT from Residex,
Yep.
but they will happily overnight soil samples to Georgia for me, so.
There you go. Find somebody to do that. I'm not going to.
Not asking you, Joe, have to.
No, but that's right. So if you guys are currently doing that, you're charging for soil tests, just make sure you get the whole picture. And don't let, the dealer should be the one dictating what you're gonna have to do. Again, if you send me a soil test, half of the recommendations that I make for you are things I don't sell. I have no money invested into the stuff that I am recommending. I just want that soil to function, because I know that if I can recommend the direct application of a heavy dose of phos, or a heavy dose of potassium, or it's liming, or whatever, I know that everything else that I'm currently providing to you will work better. And you'll like me more. This is really important. But that's what we really want. That's what we're going for, is I want the soil to function at its highest capacity, so that everything that I'm giving to you functions at its highest capacity. Yes, Mr. Lindsay?
So your customer says, great, I'm gonna put all this stuff down, so we've been doing lots of amending. Not realizing the way that we were selling it, people were expecting it to work.
Immediately.
Yes.
No.
Even though I said, hey, this is gonna take some time, but they didn't really understand that I meant for real,
Like real time, like linear time.
Yes, so
Yeah.
what's your recommendation about, I've just started saying, look, these things take anywhere from 9 to 24 months, so if you're selling your house, tell me now, otherwise we need to be married for a little while.
Yeah, okay, that's a great way to do it.
I don't know if it is, but so
I mean, what it's going to depend on is the acceptable level of destruction that is happening in the lawn currently. So if a person looks out there and they've got like 50% coverage of turf, and they're weighing out, I'm selling my house in a couple of months, then recommend that they resod.
Yeah, that's what we did.
Right? Yeah, okay, so, give them the correct information, I think that's super important. But you're right, without really getting super adapted to the soil types, without getting materials that are going to work the fastest, and what did I say earlier? What's going to work the fastest? Finest grind, smallest piece, that's what you need. The finest you can get is going to speed up the process. That's what you want, because you need it to work into the soil. You don't want it breaking down on the soil surface and working its way through. Think about, everybody familiar with the game Plinko? Right? Come on, Price is Right. Woo! Drop that disc. So it comes down and it's just like tick, 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 working through. That's what it has to happen. The larger the particle is, it has to work through all of these other soil particles to get into a place that gets used. So the smaller you can make that, the more direct the route.
So am I saying it correctly again, 9 to 18 months?
It depends on what it is. How old is the soil? If it's new, it'll be fast.
Like when you're doing like, say, sulfur or magnesium or something like that.
Okay, if you put out granular sulfur, you're lucky to get, I don't know, 50% realization rate in 12 months. If it's fine, it's ground up, and it's getting out there, it's about 90 days. Same with limestone. The bigger the particle, the longer it takes. You're going to get maybe on like say a 40 mesh or something like that, a large particle chip, that's gonna take about 3 years to break down and cause anything to happen. So if you're getting big chunks in there, plan on it lasting a long time. If it's a powder and you get messy and you turn gray while you're doing it, you're going to get it in like 90 days. Realization rate's about 80% of 90 days, that's good. That's corrected and that's fast. With the other stuff, we talk about soluble nutrients like potassium and things like that. If I've got to do corrective, it says I'm like 120 pounds shy on a year, ain't no way I'm putting that out of one. Yeah, no, that's expensive. Like that would suck your entire budget up right there. Like I charge this guy $50. It's like $1,000. Yeah, you can't do it. You have to strip that in. So most of the time, when I make K recommendations, it's a maximum about a half pound per 1,000. And if I can get it all out in one, like I want to do it every round, I'll try to do that if that works with a person's budget. If that's the only thing that's limiting in their program, and that's the only thing that we're going to have to spend money on, that's a great investment. If everything is bad, we're just going to work with what we can. We're going to foliar feed the crap out of that grass, give it a good look, and let the soil slowly work its way back. So we want the grass to look good, and we can do that with these liquid nutrients to really get it flushing. But we still may have to do some buffering with some lime or sulfur or anything else like that. Does that make sense?
4 pounds, can you do it in a year
4 pounds?
of K?
I would, but it would depend on the soil. If it was heavy clay, you could.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But it's gonna dry the crap out of it, okay? Know that. Potassium works as a water regulator to the roots. So if you're having a very wet year, hammer it. Totally, just nail it, because it can handle it at that point, and you'll actually alleviate some disease by doing that.
Okay.
So, there's nothing wrong with doing that. More questions? Is it dinner time? Tick, tick, Deidre says, get rotating. Okay, there's food. I'm done with this. You guys feel free to ask me questions after this. Oh, shit, that's right. Where's my panel? All right, I'm not gonna let anybody get up, because we have to do this quick, right? Because they're gonna get, when do they put food in? We're good? Okay. I thought that's what you were signaling, smelling things. All right, let's get a few people up here that know that they're supposed to be on this particular panel. Which panel are we actually doing? Marketing? What are we talking about? We're talking about stuff. If anybody needs a quick pee break, do it. Growing your business, ask me anything. There we go. All right, Luke, come on up. I will introduce everybody. Yeah, right. Get on up here. Pat. How do you do?
Are you live still?
Jesse.
Supposed to wear them in. Are you videoing or are you? I was waiting still. Live video. Hey. Who's getting first?
Me.
You're getting first.
I
Your
am
mustache
always
looking
get
really
first.
solid.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm always first. No one else is first but me.
I believe that. What he likes to do.
Okay, so that's it, folks. I am going to hang it up from here. Thanks for watching, and I guess we'll get back to it later. No, you weren't first. I was first. I am always first, no matter